Welcome to the I Need Coffee and Better Ideas podcast, where we caffeinate your brain with the freshest takes in news media.
How do you get people actually to come to your site when there's so much distraction? So in order to do that, you have to have like a really clear strategy of value differentiation. And I think the next stage for publishers is hey, steal the best ideas.
Welcome to this day's edition of I Need More Coffee and Better Ideas. Today I've got with me Marc Zohar from Viafoura. They're a great partner of ours at Norkon, and I've known Marc for quite some time. I think we met when I was at Zephyr, maybe?
I think that's right, yeah.
Yeah. And we've met at various conferences. I've heard him speak to customers and prospects and with me and with others. And I figured let's have him on and get his views on things. So welcome to the show, Marc.
Thanks. And you forgot to mention that you've seen me and I've seen you do karaoke and dive bars all over the world. So
that is true.
Another thing we got going
I'm so happy you brought that up. Thank you. What was the song you did last time?
I can't remember. I did. I usually do When Doves Cry by Prince and a few others. So
great. Well, I'm sure we'll have more chances to do that in the future as well. To kick it off, Marc, it'd be great, if you could tell us a little bit about who you are and how'd you end up where you are now, and then perhaps what you see for the future.
Yeah, probably like a lot of people, a long and winding career filled with sliding doors that took me to various places, and kind of where I'm at right now. I started my career actually in telecom. So in Canada, where I'm based in Toronto, and was working for a company which was actually a startup that was challenging at the time the monopolist in Canada for communications and telecom. And from that, really learned about being a scrappy kind of guerrilla startup team, even though we were focusing on it was an industry that was maybe like publishing, a legacy industry to begin with. So really learned my chops about being part of this startup team, being innovative, moving fast, challenging the perceptions of what is possible and what is expected. And from that, I kind of continued for different companies. I worked for Sprint Canada, AT&T Canada, in similar roles, product operations, etc. Then moved to a consulting role. So I was recruited by Canada's largest law firm. I'm not a lawyer, but to start a business practice for them, help their customers really understand. At the time, this was when the web was just like a web 1.0. How do we take advantage of the web? They have a lot of customers from media at the time. So I worked with a lot of media companies back then, forming initial strategies around, go-to-market, business, commercial. And then after a while, I decided I wanted to play on a bigger stage and wanted to move to the U.S. And so I moved to Boston and worked for Forrester Research, which is a well-known research and advisory group. So I led Forrester's media and telco research in North America. Well, actually, it was global, but primarily in North America. And it was a fascinating place to be. This was the go-go, early 2000s, lots of VC capital going in. We saw lots of different things. Mobile was just starting to happen. And my favorite memory from that time was we received an NDA that tomorrow someone's coming in and it's going to be really important. Turned out that Cisco came into Forrester's office with a bunch of lawyers, and they closed the door and said, hey, we want to give you a preview of a new technology we're going to be announcing soon, and it's called Wi-Fi. And I said, that's the stupidest name I ever heard. Change the name. So it tells you how much I know about anything. But it was a great time to be there. Saw lots of different things, saw VCs trying to find companies and companies trying to figure out their business models. And from there, I got recruited to go on the other side of the business, which was on the investor side. So I worked in private equity for a while in New York, really helping to identify new opportunities for investments. A lot of it was mostly finding assets that we can turn into new business opportunities. Anyways, that all happened. I was there for 9/11 in New York, which was a defining and horrible moment I'll never forget. And this is long-winded. I hope it doesn't take all 20 minutes. But then we had twins, boy-girl twins, when we were in Boston. Our family was all in Canada, and we got to the point where we kind of felt we wanted to go back home to get some support and get back to family. So I moved back to Toronto, actually the day that George W. Bush invaded Iraq. Which was the perfect time to leave the United States. And then I started to kind of think about what I wanted to do next. And I decided that I actually wanted to put skin in the game, and I wanted to actually be a founder of companies and build companies. And I started basically for the next 10 years building a range of companies in the software space, initially in kind of 3D web applications for product configuration, and then an analytics company. That company was acquired by another company here in Toronto, Scribble Live, which you probably know.
You know them, yes. Or knew them, I should say, because they no longer exist.
Yeah, they no longer is a once competitor in live blogging and other things. And there I was brought in to basically deal with a mess. But during my time at Scribble Live, I got introduced to Viafoura. We were thinking about certain partnerships or acquisitions or mergers. The timing wasn't right. The business wasn't right. We ended up selling Scribble Live to a Brazilian content marketing company. And at that point, the investors in Viafoura kind of came to me and said, hey, listen, we'd love for you to kind of participate. So that brought me here about 4 years ago. And Viafoura's mission, very much a mission-driven company, which I love. We're really trying to help, sustain and grow the media business and the publishing business, and help them survive and thrive in very challenging times by helping them build loyal audiences, increase their registrations, deal with all the challenges. So that's kind of how I got here.
It's quite the career. I mean, everything from startups, legacy radio, PE even. I didn't know that. And I didn't know you'd been in PE, which I'm sure we can have a beer over that at some point. So I wanted to pick up on sort of if there's been any key learnings because that you think can be helpful for the media industry. And I'll give some frame to that. So you and I go to a lot of conferences. We listen to a lot of people talk on stage. We meet a lot of different people. That's one of the best things that I, appreciate in the job that I have, is that I get to talk to a lot of people. And is there anything that you see perhaps from other industries that you've been in that, this could be picked up by the media industry, or this is something that perhaps the media industry is doing wrong, or, whatever it may be that you've seen other places that you believe could be brought into our industry?
Yeah, so many. I would say, and I think the publishing and media industry have made some progress in that. But if you go back to, let's say 3-4 years, they weren't there. And that is, you really have to not be seduced by legacy revenues that are declining. And you have to make a path and a clear path to the future, which is going to be disruptive in the short term, but is your only kind of long-term opportunity to be relevant and sustain yourselves. And I think they've started to make that, right? You've seen folks shift quickly from print to digital. It's not all the way there, and print continues to be a significant revenue driver for a lot of publishers, which is important. But I think they really understand their future is not only in digital, but their future is to be relevant to new audiences. As a source of not only news, entertainment, a source of, also a source of trust. So I think that's important. The other thing I would say is that, looking at other industries is, relevance is the most important thing. How do we stay relevant, and how do publishers stay relevant in an attention economy when everyone is on Instagram, on YouTube, on TikTok? I'm watching Netflix. I've got 7 subscriptions to HBO Max. Your time, and I'm always, by the way, stunned by the fact that how do you get people actually to come to your site when there's so much distraction? Yeah. So in order to do that, you have to have like a really clear strategy of value differentiation. And I think the next stage for publishers is, and we say this all the time, is hey, steal the best ideas. Users, consumers have developed habits, and habits that form are really important, and they're hard to break. And if you don't deliver on the habits of the users, they're not going to stick around. And what I mean by that is our habits as consumers are not only do we want to consume content, we want to participate with it. We want to share those experiences with others. We want to feel part of live experiences.
Yeah.
Those, I think, is the next stage and wave of how do you stay relevant in an attention economy? And also, how do you kind of incorporate some of the best practices, both in terms of commercial models and habits? So think about the influencer economy, the creator economy. Why aren't publishers and why shouldn't publishers establish a position in that market?
It's very interesting. I was just at a conference in Brussels this week at the TWIPE Future, what's it called? Digital Growth Summit. And I was lucky enough to be invited to be a part of a panel during one of the breakout sessions. And it was me and Stig Erskov, the CEO of JP, and a couple of guys from Le Monde, from DPG in Belgium. I was almost thinking, why am I on this panel? But anyways, and what we actually discussed there was the influencer economy and how publishers can leverage their journalists in a better way to create that closer relationship. And one thing is the content creation, but to your point, also interact with the users, right? You know, if you can have an interaction with a journalist or an editor on some level, and there's, or perhaps other people as well, on the platform while you're digesting today's news or a feature story or whatever it may be, really, that seems to be a pretty natural next step as far as I can see. But do you see that there are? Is there a size of publishers that is size a matter when it comes to being proactive in this space, or is that just me thinking that, oh, okay, the bigger publishers can do this, but perhaps the medium to mid plus publishers, they might not have the bandwidth?
I think it's true to some extent. I mean, smaller publishers have fewer resources. They may not have modernized their tech stack as much. They may not have many tools. No, I think, if I break it down into, like, think about local news, right? Anywhere in the world. The thing about local news is you're part of the community, right?
Yeah.
You're speaking to the community, and you've built trust and brand, and that's hugely important. And it's really hard to do for anybody else. So that's like a core position of strength for even small local publishers. People rely on it. They've seen it in their newsstands. Maybe they see it now on their iPad and so on. Going back to the influencer or creator economy, I believe, and having these discussions with some of our customers, if you're in local news, why aren't you reaching out to the local influencers? Every city has a TikToker who's talking about the best restaurants, the best places to be, talking about the city itself, politics in the city, and so on. They're doing it on TikTok and Instagram.
Can I just cut you off for half a second there? I even would go so far and say you might not even need the influencers who may be on social media or have a large following in social media. Some of the biggest influencers on the local level could be the local butcher or the local owner of the dry cleaner store or whatever it may be, or the local coach of the soccer team. Maybe not so much in the US. Well, I guess it's growing, but wherever it could be other people as well. Or am I perhaps taking it too far? I don't know.
No, I think that's true. And I think actually local news has probably done that, your man on the street interview or sources to stories. But I think that's the point. At a macro level, news has to move, and media, from a passive content consumption model where, hey, come, read, leave, to hold on a second, I want to engage with this more deeply. I want to understand. I want to meet other like-minded peers. I want to have conversations with the reporter. I want to ask them questions. How did you come about this investigative report? Are there other areas, So that's a lot of what we do at Viafoura, is help, build or transfer those user habits that people have developed over social and bring them to your owned and operated properties. Build that direct relationship. Ask a question of a butcher, if a butcher happens to be, leaving comments or part of a live chat around whatever charcuterie boards in Oslo. But I think that's it. But going back to the creator economy, though, is I go to any city. Oslo has creators creating content around Oslo, right? Toronto has. The Toronto Star, our newspaper here, why aren't they actually creating a platform for them to reach their audience directly rather than through TikTok? So I think these are early stages, but the core point is you have to think different, to kind of quote the great Steve Jobs, but you also have to be very proactive in thinking about the habits and the user needs. Going back to kind of user needs models, are we serving the user needs in today's modern digital social, world?
Yeah, I think that's right, and we had an example of that here, although it didn't go that well for NRK. NRK is the government-owned broadcaster in Norway. They brought in the biggest influencer in Norway and gave her a podcast show that she was given almost free reign on what she could do and talk about. That didn't go so well because I think they went perhaps a bit too far. I wanted to ask you then, how do you moderate editorial control? Because that's one of the paradoxes that I see right now is that when it comes to trusted media, a lot of the younger audiences are saying, okay, we don't trust the legacy media. They've written this, that, and reported on this and that, and it's been wrong, and it's been, whatever. We don't trust them. And then on the other hand, they'll listen to podcasters and influencers and TikTokers who have absolutely no clue what they're talking about health or about food or about travel, whatever it may be. And there's that disconnect for me where I see that the editorial control is lost, and thus also the quality and my trust in it can easily be lost. How do you bridge that gap between what you're talking about on the community and sort of user created content to the editorial part? Is there something there that you see can be sort of bridged?
It's a very, I think, relevant, important point. And again, going back one step, over the last, I don't know how many years, 8 years, 6 years, globally, especially in North America, but I think globally, there's been a loss of trust in institutions, a loss of trust in expertise.
Yep.
Why am I going to listen to a doctor when, user 5678 Instagram is telling me this, right?
Yeah.
And I think it's been really dangerous. I think it tends to be a very dangerous trend where when everyone's opinion is a fact, then there are no facts, and then there's no truth.
Yeah.
And the media has been built on truth and facts for the most part. And it's been a source of trust for a long time. That's been eroded. So how do we get over that? Well, I think you have to establish and reestablish trust with users. One of the ways, and it's not the only way by any means, is not to talk down to users from an ivory tower sitting in an editorial chair, but to actually engage users in that conversation, accept their questions, accept their concerns, respond to them as best you can, whether you do that on social or whether, as Viafoura is trying to do that on your owned and operated properties. One of our most popular and effective experiences that we enable are live Q&As on publisher sites. And generally what they do is they'll bring one of their journalists or reporter to do like a 1 hour live Q&A. The Telegraph does this really well. The Independent in the UK, Toronto Star does it. A whole bunch of our customers do it. And they'll allow the audience to ask questions and get the responses like in real time during that session. And that builds that direct relationship. You're not just a byline, a name on a byline. You're an actual person responding to my questions. That can start to build a relationship and trust.
Yeah.
I mean, there are a lot of other things, but that's one way to do it, I think, is to engage your audience in the content and engage them in conversation.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I've seen examples of the same where that's been done with good, well, not just pretty, but relatively good success, where it's been, you can get a lot of engagement and once they see that you're out seeking the story, that is not just something that you want to ram down their throats, but you actually want to hear other people's perspective. User-generated content, like we talked about, is one of the ways to do that.
Yeah, and I would say, and by the way, I know this is Norkon's sweet spot. You guys do this extremely well. We do it to some extent too. Is another way to build trust is to be a source for live breaking information.
Yeah.
Right. And if it's factual, it's on the ground, you're running a live blog, you've got reporters on the ground, whether it's a weather event or a political event or whatever it may be. And if you can be a source of, fact check truth as much as possible, have that live experience, that's another way of building trust.
Yeah, definitely. I think the live relationship you can have in those instances when something breaking does happen is definitely another way to build trust with your audiences. All right, so we're coming close to the end here, Mark, and I think you and I could keep talking for probably hours on end, and I'm sure we will the next time we see each other. But I always round off these things with a coffee related question, and I know the for me the answer is about 5 cups a day. So how many cups of coffee do you have per day, Mark?
On a work day, probably 4.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Do you start off with coffee or do you hold on?
So I walk to work every morning. I don't have a coffee before I leave home. So I walk to work. It's about a 20-minute walk, pretty easy. First thing I do is drink a big glass of water when I get to the office, and followed by an espresso. So that gets me going in the morning. And then we've got, a good coffee machine here. So probably, a couple before lunch, a couple after. Depends how hard the day is.
Exactly.
But you know what? I was recently at my favorite type of coffee, by the way, is, and you have to be careful where you say this, is Turkish coffee.
Yeah.
Don't be in a Greek restaurant or an Armenian restaurant and order Turkish coffee. That's a death knell.
Yeah.
But I'm a big fan of really strong kind of Turkish coffee.
I believe Brian Morrissey said something similar on one of the first episodes of this podcast series. So I think there's more than you appreciating Turkish coffee.
Yeah. Well, the other thing is my mother grew up, in Bulgaria and other places, but they used to drink Turkish coffee. You turn it upside down at the end, and they would read your fortune from the kind of what's on the side of the cup when you turn it around. So it's kind of been in my childhood and throughout my growing up, as my mom would read my fortune after she would drink Turkish coffee.
Oh, that's pretty cool. That's a good story for this podcast. All right, Mark. Well, thank you so much, and I look forward to seeing you again soon at some conference somewhere in the world. Hopefully pretty soon.
I hope so. All right. Thanks, Mark.
All right. Thank you, Mark.
Take care.